Hello, future doctors. This is your professor speaking. Today, we will be discussing a very important law which governs the practice of medicine. Okay? This law is the reason why there is a medical course, why there exists a medical profession. Republic Act number 2382, otherwise known as the Medical Act of 1959. This is an old law. However, the provisions of this law are still relevant and is made a basis for the medical profession. Okay? This is just an overview. Okay? Do not worry, I will give you a copy of the updated versions of this law. Let's begin. Article 1, Objectives and Implementation. Section 1. This Act provides for and shall govern the standardization and regulation of medical education, the examination for registration of physicians, and the supervision, control, and regulation of the practice of medicine in the Philippines. So these tasks, okay, these duties are delegated to different government agencies. Section 2, Enforcement. For the purpose of implementing the provisions of the said Act, there are created the following agencies: the Board of Medical Education under the Department of Education, and the Board of Medical Examiners under the Commissioner of Civil Service and under the Commission of Civil Service. However, this provision of law has been changed. Okay, so the Board of Medical Education, the duties are now assumed by the Commission on Higher Education or CHED. And then the Board of Medical Examiners, duties are now assumed by the Board of Medicine under the Philippine Regulatory Commission. So that is why when doctors take the medical licensure, the government agency okay involved is the PRC or the Philippine Regulatory Commission. Now let's move to Article 2, the Board of Medical Education and its function. Section 3, composition of the Board of Medical Education. The Board of Medical Education shall be composed of the following: the Secretary of Education or his duly authorized representative as chairman. Next is the Secretary of Health or his duly authorized representative as the director of the Bureau of Private Schools or his duly authorized representative. Next, the chairman of the Board of Medical Examiners, now the PRC, or his duly authorized representatives. Next, a representative of the Philippine Medical Association or PMA. This is the organization of the Philippine medical doctors. Next is the Dean of the College of Medicine of the University of the Philippines or a representative of the Council of Deans of the Philippine Medical Schools and a representative of the Association of the Philippine Medical Colleges as members. So the officials acting as chairman and members of the Board of Medical Education shall hold office during their incumbency in their respective position. Section 4, compensation and traveling expenses. The chairman, member, and secretary of the Board of Medical Education shall be entitled to 25 pesos per dime for every meeting. Okay, so this is the honorarium. However, this has already been changed. Provided the number of meetings authorized with a per dime shall not exceed 4 times in a month, and traveling expenses in connection with their official duties as herein provided. Next, let's discuss about the function of the board. Okay, Section 5. The functions of the Board of Medical Education shall be: first, to determine and prescribe the requirements admission into a recognized college of medicine. Okay? So it is the board that provides for the minimum requirements in order for a student to be admitted into a recognized college of medicine. Okay? So as of the moment, one requirement is the NMAT. Okay? So it is updated. So this is the updated policies, standards, and guidelines for medical education from CHED. Memorandum Order number 10, series of 2006. Okay? So if you want to enroll in a college of medicine, one prerequisite is having a bachelor's degree. Students seeking admission to the medical education program must be a holder of any baccalaureate degree, okay, a 4-year course. Second prerequisite is the examination of NMAT or the National Medical Admission Test. Applicants to medical schools in the Philippines are required to take the NMAT. The test is developed and administered by the Center for Educational Measurement or CEM as authorized by the Commission on Higher Education or CHED. Per Memorandum of Agreement since 1985 between the former Board of Medical Education, now the Technical Committee for Medical Education and CEM. The testing dates, local and abroad, are decided and announced by CHED and CEM. An NMAT applicant must be a graduate or a graduating student of any college degree course at the time of the testing. The NMAT scores obtained by a medical school applicant at any given examination year are deemed sufficient and valid as basis for evaluating applicants for admission to a college of medicine. The applicant is encouraged to do well in the test and obtain his or her best scores in the NMAT to increase his or her chances of being accepted in the best medical schools in the Philippines. Okay. Next requisite is the Certificate of Eligibility for Admission to a Medical Course or CEMED. The CEM application form may be obtained from the regional offices of the Commission on Higher Education or CHED. Foreign students may apply at CHED Office of Student Services or OSS located at the National Engineering Center Building, University of the Philippines, Diliman, Quezon City. The requirement in securing the CEM are as follows. So if you want to take this exam or fill out the requirements, so first, you need a fully accomplished CEM application form. And then you must bring your transcript of records, copy of the diploma or certificate of graduation, authenticated by the registrar of the school where he or she graduated. For graduates of government schools, NMAT results, original or duplicate copy of examinee report form issued by CEM, and then birth certificate, then your certificate of good moral character. You must take note that this requirement is a continuing requirement. Okay, good moral character. Even if you are already doctors, you must possess this requirement. Next requisite in your application for a medical school is applicant's acceptance in medical school. The CEM does not automatically assure the applicant of a slot in any of the medical schools in the country. A student who has been issued a CEM is given full acceptance only upon meeting the other requirements of the admitting school, such as passing the interviews. Okay, there's an initial interview for the student. It may be advisable, therefore, to seek preliminary acceptance from the medical school chosen by the applicant before obtaining the CEM. Okay, so that is the update, okay, in this provision. So, next function of the board, B, to determine and prescribe requirements for minimum physical facilities of colleges of medicine. Okay, the board will require the college of medicine or the university to have certain facilities, okay, in order to meet the minimum requirement of having a medical school. To wit, like buildings, including hospitals, equipment and supplies, apparatus, instruments, appliances, laboratories, the bed capacity for instruction purposes, operating and delivery room, facilities for outpatient services, and others used for didactic and practical instructions in accordance with the modern trends. Okay, so these facilities are important, especially for trainings, okay, of the students for their hands-on experience. Next function, C, to determine and prescribe the minimum number and minimum qualifications of teaching personnel, including student teachers ratio. Okay, because it is important that the population of the student must be in proportion to the teacher, because for example, in a classroom, it cannot be that one teacher is to 1,000 student. That is impossible. There would be no learning in that setting. Next is to determine and prescribe the minimum required curriculum leading to the degree of the Doctor of Medicine. Okay, the board will make the required curriculum, okay, the required subject to be taken or for the school that they can offer in order to achieve the minimum requirement in the practice of medicine. Next, to authorize the implementation of experimental medical curriculum in a medical school that has exceptional faculty and instrumental facilities, such as an experimental curriculum may prescribe admission and graduation requirements other than those prescribed in this act, provided that only exceptional students shall be enrolled in an experimental curriculum. So there's a qualification. So if a medical school has an experimental curriculum, so those exceptional students are to be admitted. Okay? Next, to accept accept applications for certification for admission to a medical school and keep a register of those issued said certificate, and to collect from said applicants the amount of 25 pesos each, which shall accrue to the operating fund of the Board of Medical Education. Okay? So, this provision has been amended. I will give you the updated changes. However, this organic law is still relevant because this law is the basis of the all recent laws concerning the practice of medicine. That's why we need to discuss this law, even though this law is Jurassic, okay? Very old historical law. Next, to select, determine, and approve hospitals or some departments of the hospitals for training which comply with the minimum specific physical facilities as provided in subparagraph B hereof. Next function, to promulgate and prescribe and enforce the necessary rules and regulations for the proper implementation of the foregoing functions. Okay? It is the board who are tasked to make the implementing rules and regulations. Okay? In order to sustain, in order to make the medical schools compliant to the minimum requirement of the law. Next is Section 6, the minimum required course. Students seeking admission to medical course must have a bachelor's degree in science or arts. Okay? That's why before you enter the medical course, your credentials are being reviewed if they have uh, the proper standard, okay, the proper prerequisite like the English course, the arts and sciences course. The medical course leading to the degree of Doctor of Medicine shall be at least 4 years and shall consist of the following subjects: anatomy and physiology, biochemistry and nutrition, pharmacology, microbiology, parasitology, medicine, and therapeutics. Next is pathology, gynecology, ophthalmology, otology, rhinology, and laryngology, pediatrics, obstetrics, surgery, preventive medicine, and public health. Next, legal medicine. This is our subject, my subject, including medical jurisprudence. Then medical economics and ethics. Okay, these are the minimum subjects that is required to be in a medical college, approved medical college, provided that the board is hereby authorized or modify or add to the subjects listed above as the needs and demands of progress in the medical profession may require. So the board may add additional subjects, okay, in order to adapt in the present. For example, in our school, we have ICS or the International Studies, okay? And right now, we have an updated ethical subject. Next is Section 7, Admission Requirements. The medical college may admit any student who has not been convicted by any court of competent jurisdiction. Like what I've said before, one continuing requirement is the requirement of good moral character. So as a student, when you become a doctor, okay, so that requirement is still operational. Of any offense involving moral turpitude and who presents a record showing completion of a bachelor's degree in the science or art. Okay? So you are a graduate of a bachelor's degree before you are admitted to the course of medicine. Next, a certificate of eligibility for entrance to a medical school from the Board of Medical Education. Next, a certificate of good moral character issued by two of his former professors in the College of Liberal Arts. And the birth certificate. Okay? Nothing in this act shall be construed to inhibit any College of Medicine from establishing, in addition to the preceding, other entrance requirements that may deemed admissible. Okay? So, the college itself, okay, the school itself can make another requirement. For example, if they want an entrance exam, okay, they can do that in addition to this mandatory requirements. So for purposes of this act, the term College of Medicine shall mean to include the Faculty of Medicine, Institute of Medicine, School of Medicine, or other similar institutions offering a complete medical course leading to the degree of Doctor of Medicine or its equivalent. Every College of Medicine must keep a complete record of enrollment, grades, graduates, and must publish each year a catalog giving the following information. First, the date of publication. Second, the calendar of academic year. Third, faculty role indicating whether on full-time or part-time basis. Fourth, requirements for admission. Fifth, the grading system. Sixth, requirement for promotion. Seventh, requirement for graduation. 8. Curriculum and description of course by the department. 9. And the last is number of students enrolled in each class in the preceding year as amended by RA 4229. Now, let's go to Article 3 of this law. The Board of Medical Examiners, okay? The power of the Board of Medical Examiners is now transferred to PRC, okay? The Philippine Regulatory Commission. So, Section 8, Prerequisite to the practice of medicine. No person shall engage in the practice of medicine in the Philippines unless he is at least 21 years of age, has satisfactorily passed the corresponding board examination, and is a holder of a valid certificate of registration. Okay? These are the requirements in order to practice medicine in the Philippines. Okay? So, the certificate of registration must be duly issued to him by the Board of Medical Examiners. Okay? So these three are the requirement in order to practice medicine. However, if you pass the examination, okay, the Philippine licensure examination, it is not automatic that you can practice. The final act to become a full-fledged doctor is the taking of the oath. Okay, the oath of your profession. Now, let's go to section 9. Candidates for board examinations. Candidates for board examinations shall have the following qualifications. First, he shall be a citizen of the Philippines or a citizen of any foreign country who has submitted competent and conclusive documentary evidence confirmed by the Department of Foreign Affairs showing that his country's existing laws permits citizens of the Philippines to practice medicine under the same rules and regulation governing citizens thereof. Okay? So foreigners can take the examination here provided that they can present that the law of their country also allows Filipino citizens to practice medical profession. That is what you call the law of reciprocity. Okay? It is allowed in international law. Second, he shall be of good moral character. Like what I've said before, good moral character is a continuing requirement, okay? As a student, as a doctor, as you practice medicine. Next, he shall be of sound mind. Okay? Next, he shall not have been convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction of any offense involving moral turpitude. Next, he shall be a holder of degree of Doctor of Medicine or its equivalent conferred by a College of Medicine duly recognized by the government of the Philippines. And lastly, he must have completed a calendar year of technical training known as internship, the nature of which shall be prescribed by the Board of Medical Education, okay, by CHED, undertaken in hospitals and health centers approved by the board, okay? So before taking the board exam, um, the medical student, the medical graduate must first have an internship. So this is what you call the PGI, postgraduate internship for 1 year. Next section is acts constituting the practice of medicine. Okay, this is very important. Uh, whether a person is practicing medicine or not, because it has legal implications. Okay, there are liabilities that might arise. A person shall be considered as engaged in the practice of medicine if A, who shall for compensation, okay, payment, fee, salary, or reward in any form paid to him directly or through another, or even without the same, physically examine any person and diagnose, treat, operate, or prescribe any remedy for human disease, injury, deformity, physical, mental, psychical condition, or any ailment, real or imaginary, regardless of the nature of the remedy or treatment administered, prescribed, or recommended. So, this is a very broad definition in the practice of medicine. Okay, you treat, you prescribe, you recommend. Okay, and for compensation. So even if without compensation, there is physical examination. As a student, you must master this definition. Okay, so these acts, these are acts constituting the practice of medicine, because there are legal implications if there are violations. Okay, for example, you are performing this and then you don't have any license to do such things, then you can be in prison. Okay, the the three-pronged liability will attach to you. Okay, what are the three-pronged liability? The administrative liability, the criminal liability, and the civil liability. Next, okay, acts constituting the practice of medicine, who shall by means of signs, cards, advertisement, written or printed matter, or through radio, television, or any other means of communication, either offer or undertake by any means or method to diagnose, treat, operate, or prescribe any remedy for human disease, injury, deformity, physical or psychical conditions, or who shall falsely use the title MD after his name. Okay? So it constitutes the practice of medicine. But if you are not a doctor and you put MD in your name, then it is considered an illegal practice of medicine. Then that three-pronged liability may attach to you. Okay? The criminal act, especially the criminal aspect. Section 11, exemption. The preceding section shall not be construed to affect A, any medical student duly enrolled in an approved medical college or school, or graduate under training, serving without any professional fee in any government or private hospital, provided that he renders such service under the direct supervision and control of a registered physician. Okay? So, During trainings, it is not considered a practice of medicine because the medical student is still learning. Next, any legal registered dentist engage exclusively in the practice of dentistry. Next, any duly registered masseur or physiotherapist, provided that he applies massage or other physical means upon written order or prescription of a duly registered physician, or provided that such application of massage or physical means shall be limited to physical muscular development. Okay, so this is not considered a practice of medicine. Another, any duly registered optometrist who mechanically fits or sells lenses, artificial eyes, limbs, or other similar appliances, or who is engaged in the mechanical examination of the eye for the purpose of constructing or adjusting eyeglasses, spectacles, and lenses. Next, any person who renders any service gratuitously. So when you say gratuitously, free of charge, okay? In cases of emergency or in place where the services of a duly registered physician, nurse, or midwife are not readily available. Next, any person who administer or recommends any household remedy as per classification of existing pharmacy laws. Another, any clinical psychologist or mental hygienist in the performance of his duties in regard to patients with psychiatric problems, provided such performance is done with a prescription and direct supervision of a duly registered physician. Lastly, prosthetics who fit artificial limbs under the supervision of a registered physician. Now, let's go to section 12, limited practice without any certificate of registration. Okay? So, because one requirement in order to practice medicine is a certificate of registration. However, in this instance, the law gives recognize the following person in order to practice medicine without any certificate of registration. Okay, there's a update here. So DOH allows medical graduates as deputized physician. This is a new law due to global pandemic. So the deputized physicians will be handling non-COVID-19 cases in a primary healthcare facility or in the hospitals affiliated with their medical school to ensure that other essential health services will not be interrupted throughout the COVID-19 response. Okay? So if you are a graduate of a medical school, then right now, you are deputized as a physician, okay? Because doctors as frontliners is very important in this fight against COVID-19. Okay, A, physicians and surgeons from other countries called in a consultation only and exclusively in specific and definite cases, or those attached to international bodies or organization assigned to perform certain definite work in the Philippines, provided they shall limit their practice in their specific work assigned to them, and provided further they shall secure a previous authorization from the Board of Medical Examiners. Okay? Doctors who are expert in their field for consultative issues. Next, commissioned medical officers of the United States Armed Forces stationed in the Philippines while rendering services as such only for the members of the said armed forces and within the limit of their own respective territorial jurisdiction. Okay? So the military, they are exempted provided that they only take care of their own, okay, and within their territorial jurisdiction. Next, foreign physicians employed as exchange professors in special branches of medicine or surgery, whose service may, upon previous authorization of the Board of Medical Examiners, medical students who have completed the first 4 years of medical course, graduates of medicine, and registered nurses who may be given limited and special authorization by the Secretary of Health to render services during epidemics or national emergencies whenever the services of duly registered physicians are not available. Okay? For example, this DOH circular where graduate students are being deputized as physicians. So such authorization shall automatically cease when the epidemic or national emergency is declared terminated by the Secretary of Health. Section 13. The Board of Medical Examiners and its composition and duty. So the Board of Medical Examiners are now under the jurisdiction of the PRC or the Philippine Regulatory Commission. Okay? They are the ones who will conduct the medical licensure examination. So the Board of Medical Examiners shall be composed of 6 members to be appointed by the President of the Philippines from a list of not more than 12 names approved and submitted by the Executive Council of the Philippine Medical Association or PMA. This is the mother organization of the doctors. After due consultation with other medical associations during the month of September each year, the chairman of the board shall be elected from among themselves by the members at a meeting called for the purpose. The President of the Philippines shall fill any vacancy that may occur during any examination from the list of names submitted by the Philippine Medical Association in accordance with the provision of this Act. No examiner shall handle any examination in more than 4 subjects or groups of subjects as hereinafter provided. The distribution of subjects to each member shall be agreed upon at a meeting called by the chairman for the purpose. Okay? These are just matters of reading. The examination paper shall be under the custody of the Commissioner of Civil Service or his duly authorized representative and shall be distributed to each member of the board who shall correct, grade, and sign and submit them to the Commissioner. Okay? This provision has already been updated because the one who will conduct the exam and check the exam is the PRC or the Philippine Regulatory Commission. However, we are discussing this law because still it is made the basis of all present law regarding the practice of medicine or the medical profession. Next, within 120 days from the date of the termination of examination, a final meeting of the board for the deliberation and approval of the members of the Board of Medical Examination. The Secretary of the Board shall submit to the President of the Philippines for approval of the tabulation of results without names and immediately upon receipt of the approved tabulation from the Office of the President, the Board shall insert the names and cause the publication of the names of successful candidates in alphabetical order without the rating obtained by each. At the same time, transmit a copy thereof to the Professional Regulation Commission. Okay? However, that rule has already been amended. The President of the Philippines, upon the recommendation of the Commissioner of Civil Service, after due investigation, may remove any member of the Board of Medical Examiners for neglect of duty, gross incompetency, or unprofessional or dishonorable conduct. Okay? Section 14, Qualification of Examiner. No person shall be appointed a member of the Board of Medical Examiner unless he or she first is a natural-born citizen of the Philippines. Next, he is a duly registered physician in the Philippines. Next, has been in the practice of medicine for at least 10 years. Next, is of good moral character, okay, a continuing requirement, and of recognized standing in the medical profession as certified by the Philippine Medical Association. Lastly, he is not a member of the faculty of any medical school and has no pecuniary interest, directly or indirectly, any college of medicine or any institution where any branch of medicine at the time of his appointment. So, if you think your professor is a member, okay, of the board of medicine, you will know because he will resign in his post as teacher because it is a requirement. Section 15, tenure of office and compensation of members. Okay, guys, these are just matters of reading, but I will read it. The members of the board of the medical examiners shall hold office for a term of 3 years without immediate reappointment until their successors shall have been duly appointed and duly qualified. During the first year of the implementation of this term of 1 year, two members for a term of 2 years, and then two members for a term of 3 years, provided that yearly appointments to two new members will be made to replace those whose terms will expire. Provided further that appointments to fill up vacancies created by causes other than through expiration of regular terms will be for the unexpired period only. Each member shall receive as compensation 15 pesos each candidate examined for registration as physician and 5 pesos for each candidate examined in the preliminary or final physician examination, provided the sum of said compensation does not exceed 24,000 pesos annually. Okay? This is not important and this is now amended. Section 16, Executive Officer and the Secretary of the Board. The Secretary of the Board of Examiners, appointed in accordance with Section 10 of Act Number 4007 as amended, shall also be the Secretary of the Board of Medical Examiners, who shall keep all the records, including examination papers and the minutes of the deliberations of the board. Okay? Because, for example, if the failing rate is very high, so it is incumbent or it is discretionary upon the board to lower the passing rate. He shall also keep a register of all persons to whom certificates of registration has been granted, set forth in the name, sex, age, and place of birth of each place of business, post office address, the name of medical college or university from which he graduated or in which he had studied, together with the time spent in the study of the profession elsewhere, the name of the country where the institution is located, which had granted to him the degree or certificate of attendance on clinics, and all lectures in the medicine and surgery, and all other degrees granted to him from institutions of learning. Okay, all his credentials are being kept. He shall keep an up-to-date registration book of all duly registered physicians in the Philippines. He shall further copies all examination questions and ratings in each subject of the respective candidates in the physician examination. 1 month after the release of the list of the successful examinees to the deans of the different colleges of medicine, exclusively for the information and guidance of the faculties thereof. This report shall be considered as restricted information, okay, confidential informations. Any school which violates this rule shall be deprived of each privilege. The secretary shall keep all the records and proceedings and issue and receive all papers in connection with any and all complaints presented to the board. Now, let's go on to section 17, rules and regulations. So, the Board of Medical Examiners, with the approval of the Professional Regulation Commission, shall promulgate such rules and regulations as may be necessary for the proper conduct of the examination, correction of examination papers, and registration of physicians. Okay? So, even if the medical student has passed the Philippine licensure examination, it is not automatic that he becomes a medical doctor. The last step is the taking of the Hippocratic Oath, okay? That's the operative act, okay? The final step in becoming a full and regulations shall take effect 15 days after the date of their publication in the official gazette and shall not be changed within 60 days immediately before any examination. Such rules and regulations shall be printed and distributed for the information and guidance of all concerned. Section 18, dates of examinations. The Board of Medical Examiners shall give examinations for the registration of physicians twice a year on dates to be determined by it, provided that the interval between the first and the second examination in a year shall be 6 months. Okay, so there is a 6 months interval of examination. So in a single year, examination is conducted twice. In the city of Manila or any of its suburbs, after giving not less than 10 days notice to each candidate who had filed his name and address with the secretary of the board. Section 19, fees. The secretary of the board, under the supervision of the Commissioner of Civil Service, shall collect from each candidate the following fees. For complete physician examination, 100 pesos. For preliminary or final examination, 50 pesos. Okay? However, this provision has been amended. Okay? Now, the examination fee is increased. For registration as physician, 50 pesos. All fees paid as provided herein shall accrue to the funds of the Board of Medical Examiners and be expended for the payment of the compensation of the members thereof. No fees other than those provided herein shall be paid to the board. Section 20. Issuance of certificates of registration for refusal of the same. Okay, or refusal of the same. So, the Commissioner of the Civil Service, the Chairman, the members, and Secretary of the Board of Medical Examiners shall sign and issue the certificate of registration to those who have satisfactorily complied with the requirements of the board. They shall not issue a certificate of registration to any candidate who has been convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction of any criminal offense involving moral turpitude or has been found guilty of immoral or dishonorable conduct after the investigation by the board of the medical examiners or has been declared to be of unsound mind. Okay? So, like what I've said, good moral character is a continuing requirement. So, if you are a student, if you are taking the board exam, or after becoming a full-fledged doctor, good moral character is still a requirement. Okay? Your license can be removed if you violate such requirement. Section 21, the scope of examination. So these are the subject of examination that the student must master, must hurdle in order to become a full-fledged doctor. So the following subjects shall be given in the examination: preliminary examination, anatomy and histology, physiology, biochemistry, microbiology, and parasitology. Final examination, pharmacology and therapeutics, pathology, medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics and nutrition, surgery and ophthalmology, otolaryngology, rhinology, and then preventive medicine and public health. And of course, our subject, legal medicine, ethics, and medical jurisprudence. Okay? C. Complete examination, anatomy and histology, physiology, biochemistry, microbiology, parasitology, pharmacology and therapeutics, pathology, medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics and nutrition, surgery and ophthalmology, otolaryngology and rhinology, preventive medicine, and public health. And then legal medicine, ethics, and medical jurisprudence. Okay, all these subjects are being taught in your 4-year course in the medical schools. So the question shall be the same for all applicants. All answers must be written in English. Okay, so right now the examination is a multiple choice question. Okay, this provision has been amended. However, we will still read this because it is part of the law. So no name of the examinee shall appear in the examination paper, but the examiner shall devise a system whereby such applicant can be identified by number only. So in order that a candidate may be deemed to have passed his lower than 50% in any subject, provided that a candidate who fails for the third time in the complete or final examinations will be required to take a refresher course prescribed by the Board of Medical Examiners of at least 1 year in a recognized medical school. So the examiner will undergo a refresher course, okay? Or college before he could be allowed to take the subsequent examination. If the applicant is found to be proficient in the subjects in the preliminary examinations, he or she shall be exempt in this subject at the time of the final examination. In case of failure in any subject at any preliminary examination given in accordance with this section, the candidate shall then be re-examined in such subject which may have failed until he shall have finished the prescribed course of medical study and internship. Okay? So like what I've said, this provision has been amended. Do not worry, I will give you the amended provisions because actually there are other laws that are being introduced in order to complement this law. Section 22, administrative investigations. Okay, so like what I said before, the three-pronged liability of a doctor or a medical practitioner. So the threefold liabilities of a physician, the administrative liability, the civil liability, okay, and the criminal liability. So administrative investigation. In addition to the functions provided for in the preceding sections, the Board of Examiners shall perform the following duties. First, to administer oath to physician who qualified in the examinations. Second, to study the conditions affecting the practice of medicine in all parts of the Philippines, okay? in order to adapt to the changing time. Third, to exercise the powers conferred upon it by this article with a view of maintaining the ethical and professional standards of the medical profession. Fourth, to subpoena or subpoena ducis tecum, okay, uh, for witnesses for the Commissioner of Civil Service. Okay, there are two types of subpoena class. Subpoena ducis tecum, okay, where documents are being subpoenaed, okay, and subpoena testificandum, where a witness is being subpoenaed. When you say subpoena, it means that you are required to be presented in court. So such rules and regulations as it may deem necessary for the performance uh, of its duties in harmony with the provisions of this act and necessary for the proper practice of medicine in the Philippines. Administrative investigation shall be conducted by at least 2 members of the Board of Medical Examiners with 1 legal officer sitting during the investigation. Otherwise, the proceeding shall be considered void. Okay? When you say void, useless, inutile, okay? Null. The existing rules of evidence shall be observed during all administrative investigations. The board may disapprove the application for examination or registration, reprimand hearing physicians, okay, or suspend or revoke registration certificates of doctors if the respondents are found guilty after due hearing or investigation. Now, Section 23, Procedure and Rules. Within 5 days after the filing of written charges under oath, the respondent physician shall be furnished a copy thereof. Okay? This is part of due process. Without requiring him or her to answer the same. And the board shall conduct the investigation within 5 days after the receipt of such copy by the respondent. The investigation shall be completed as soon as practicable. Next is Section 24, grounds for reprimand, suspension, or revocation of registration certificate. So any of the following shall be sufficient ground for reprimanding a physician or for suspending or revoking a certificate of registration as physician. So if your certificate of registration is revoked, then you can no longer practice medicine, okay? First, conviction by a court of competent jurisdiction of any criminal offenses involving moral turpitude. Second, immoral or dishonorable conduct. Third, insanity, okay? Of course, if the person is insane, should never practice medicine. Fourth, fraud in the acquisition of the certificate of registration. Fifth, negligence, ignorance, or incompetence in the practice of his or her profession, resulting in an injury to or death of the patient. Okay, this is common in malpractice suit. Okay, uh, this is the administrative part of this liability is the removal of your license. However, the doctor has a three-pronged liability. Okay, the administrative is the removal of your license. The civil aspect is you pay in form of damages, and the criminal aspect is you get imprisoned because of your act, criminal act. 6. Addiction to alcoholic beverages or to any habit-forming drug, rendering him or her incompetent to practice his or her profession or to any form of gambling. Okay? So if you are a doctor and you are into alcohol and gambling, then your license can be revoked. Seventh, false or extravagant or unethical advertisement wherein other things than his name, profession, limitation of practice, clinic hours, office, and home address are mentioned. Okay? For example, the doctor will say, I am the best doctor in the world. So that's an unethical advertisement of self. Next, performance of or aiding in criminal abortion. Okay? In the Philippine settings, abortion is considered illegal. Okay? It is frowned upon by law. Next, knowingly issuing any false medical certificate. Very common in our practice. However, this is a violation of the conduct of the medical profession, and your license can be revoked if proven. Next, issuing any statement or spreading any news or rumor which is derogatory to the character and reputation of another physician without justifiable motive. Okay? That's self-explanatory. Next, aiding or acting as a dummy of unqualified or unregistered person to practice medicine. Next, violation of any provision of the Code of Ethics as approved by the Philippine Medical Association. Next, refusal of a physician to attend a patient in danger of death is not a sufficient ground for revocation for suspension of his registration certificate if there is a risk to the physician's life. Okay, so there is a qualification. Even though there is an emergency, however, if the physician's life will also be put in danger, then the physician may opt to get out, okay, not help the patient. Section 25, rights of the respondent. The respondent physician shall be entitled to be present, to be represented by counsel or be heard in person, to have a speedy and public hearing, to confront and to cross-examine witnesses against him or her, and to all other rights guaranteed by the Constitution and provided for in the rules of court. Of course, the physician is presumed innocent. That's why the complainant must prove um, with facts, okay, with evidence, because the constitutional guarantee would still be operational, okay? So the physician is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Section 26, appeal for judgment. The decision of the Board of Medical Examiners shall automatically become final and executory within 30 days after the date of its promulgation, unless the respondent during the same period has appealed to the Commissioner of Civil Service and later to the Office of the President of the Philippines. If the final decision is not satisfactory, the respondent may ask for a review in the case or may file in court a petition for certiorari. Okay? So these are just matter of procedure. However, I will still give you the updated version of the procedure. Section 27, reinstatement. After 2 years, the board may order the reinstatement of any physician whose certificate of registration has been revoked. If the respondent has acted in an exemplary manner in the community wherein he resides and has not committed any illegal, immoral, or dishonorable act. However, this becomes factual. You need to prove this in the board that you are now living an honorable life. Okay. Article number 4, penal and other provisions. Section 28, penalties. Any person found guilty of illegal practice of medicine shall be punished by a fine of not less than 1,000 pesos nor more than 10,000 pesos, with the subsidiary imprisonment in case of insolvency or by imprisonment of not less than 1 year nor more than 5 years, or both. Such fine and imprisonment in the discretion of the court. Next is injunction, section 29. The Board of Medical Examiners may file an action to enjoin any person illegally practicing medicine from the performance of any act constituting practice of medicine, if the case so warrants, until the necessary certificate therefore is secured. Any person who, after having been so enjoined, continues in the illegal practice of medicine shall be punished for contempt of court. The said injunction shall not relieve the person practicing medicine without certificate of registration from criminal prosecution and punishment as provided in the preceding section. Okay? So like what I said before, there is a three-pronged liability. Okay? To a physician. The administrative liability, where your license can be suspended or revoked. The civil liability, where a physician can pay in a form of damages to the patient, monetary, okay, due to um, actual damages, okay, and other forms of damages. And then lastly is the criminal liability, where the physician can be imprisoned. Next, section 30, appropriation. To carry out the provisions of this act, there is hereby appropriated out of any funds in the national treasury not otherwise appropriated the sum of 20,000 pesos. So this is an old law, okay? 1950s. So this has been amended. And then section 21, repealing clause. All acts, executive orders, administrative orders, rules and regulations, or parts thereof inconsistent with the provision of this act are repealed or modified accordingly. And then the effectivity clause, section 32. This act shall take effect upon its approval, provided that if it is approved during the time when examinations for physicians are held, it shall take effect immediately after the said examinations. Provided further that Section 6 of this Act shall take effect at the beginning of the academic year 1960 to 1961. And the first paragraph of Section 7 shall take effect 4 years thereafter. So this law was approved on June 20, 1959. Okay? So that's the discussion of medical law. However, we will still be discussing updates, relevant laws, okay? New laws that affects the practice of medicine. So if you have any questions, class, feel free to do not hesitate to ask or message me, okay, in this Microsoft team. So thank you and God bless us all.